This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so our third installment on the afterlife is on reincarnation. We did heaven, we did hell, and now we're somewhere in between, somewhere in limbo, and that is reincarnation. One of the big problems, questions that people always have is we look at life and we look at life through our very limited perspective. We could see that which we see, which even we recognize is often very little of the whole picture. And we see much injustice. And we ask the classic question that even Moshe asked Hashem, Moshe, Lam Harios Lama Zeh, Hareini Nas Bodecha, why have you done evil to this nation? Why did bad things happen to good people? And I like to compare it to picking up a 2,000-page book, opening it up to page 1,247, reading the next 10 pages, and closing the book and saying, this doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, if we're talking about a 2,000-page book and we read 10 pages in the middle, we're not going to understand. And very often, that is what is going on with us and our perspective. So a common misconception is that people have about Judaism is that we do not believe in reincarnation. However, we're going to see that we actually do very much believe in reincarnation, not in a Dalai Lama perennial loop, but rather as a means towards an end, that we do believe in reincarnation. And it should not be very surprising because our belief, as we've gone through very clearly, we will go through again some more sources, repeating some of those sources, that we are a spiritual being that was put into a physical body in order to reach a point of uniting with God. And therefore, it's very possible that we have this extension of this visitation here on this world in this physical environment. Now we'll see some Torah laws, some psukim, some verses that are suggestive of this reincarnation. It is not explicit in the Torah itself. Rather, it is explicit by different Kabbalistic teachings of the Zohar, the Sefer HaBahir, Ramban, Nachmanides, and the Arizal, Rav Yitzchak Luria. So let us begin with source number 1 in Bereshit, where we're told, Vayitzar Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama. Hashem formed Adam, humankind, mankind, Adam, earth from the ground. Vayipach ba'apav, and he blew into his nostrils nishmat chayim, this living soul. Vayada Adam l'nefesh kaya, and man became a living being. Okay, now I need that one. Good. Now, those who are more comfortable with the Hebrew, you'll notice Vayitzer has 2 yuds. And Vayitzer means that there were 2 formations of a physical self and of a spiritual self. The Medrash there says, Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim. He blew into his nostrils the soul of life. Bara guva min ha'aretz v'nashim min hashamayim. Body from the earth, soul from the heavens. Uvishat mitato. At the time of the death, the Medrash says, the earthly part returns to the earth, the heavenly part returns to the heavens. As we know, and Kohelet vayishav ha'afar la'aretz, there says the dust will turn to the earth as it was, kishaya, va'ruach tashuv l'elokim Hashem natana, and the spirit will turn to God who gave it. Okay, so far we're talking about a physical and a spiritual self that join together during one's lifetime, and then separate at death. We have not yet touched upon the idea of Gilgul, reincarnation. Let's go to Yibum. Yibum, source number 4, right? Translated as levirate marriage, which I like to say means as much to us as Yibum does. There's no point in defining it or giving that definition. But that's based on the following situation: Ki yeshu achim yachtav, 2 brothers. Umeit echamihem, one of them died, married. Uben ein lo, and he had no child. His wife, the wife of the deceased brother, should not just go out to an ish zar, to a strange person. Rather, yivama, that brother-in-law, yavo alev alachalo leisha v'yibma. Rather, yibum is done through her marrying the brother of her late husband. And then it says, "Vaya b'chor sheteleid yakum al shem achiv." Just 1 second, Colin. I need to mute you. We're getting some bounce back. I apologize. The pasuk says there that the child, the ben abechor, the child that will be born, will be Yakum, will establish, will arise, will succeed, so to speak, al shem echav hamet, in the name of his deceased brother. Lo yimachesh shmo mi Yisroel, and that way his name will not be blotted out from Israel. It does not mean that he is given the name of his of his now father's late brother. He doesn't need to be named. The simple meaning is that he will be considered the spiritual progeny of the late brother. That's the simple understanding. That whereas this brother left this world without leaving any children, this child born when his brother marries his widowed wife, the child that will be born will be considered the spiritual progeny of the late brother. So it's as if he did have a child. And a child, we know, carries on and serves as a merit for the deceased. That's the Kaddish, that's the Yizka that we say. This child will serve as the spiritual progeny of the late brother. However, the Zohar takes it a step further. And the Zohar, like I said before, it's not explicit in the Torah, but it is explicit in the Kabbalistic sources that we have. Let's begin with the Zohar. The Zohar, source number 5, says, Vahu v'hai ihu raza di Gilgul. This is the very secret of reincarnation, meaning the son born to the husband's brother from the deceased brother's wife is a reincarnation of the deceased brother. That soul thereby comes back. And with this we can understand why this is the epitome of an act of chesed, of kindness, that is done by his widowed wife and his brother. That this is what gives him another lease on life, so to speak. What?
He really doesn't. Is his name Ben Abraham? Ben the.
Oh, interesting. I imagine he will be considered Ben, his actual father, right? It's not going to be Ben Avram, right? Not a convert, right? Yeah. But he'll be Ben that. However, according to the simple understanding, it's the spirit, even though he'll be called Ben, the father, he actually is the spiritual progeny of his biological father's brother, his mother's first husband. And according to the Zohar, he is actually the soul of that late brother that now returns. Okay? Similarly, the Zohar on the book of Shemot, where it says a pasuk which troubles many of us, and the commentators, the regular commentators, all give their explanations. But the pasuk says, "Poked avon avot al banim al shileshim val ribayim." Right? The English I keep in mind, or I will visit the sin of the fathers on the children for the third and fourth generation, and everyone's always bothered. Why should anyone be punished for anything that they did not do? And the classic answer the Gemara gives, the Mefarshim, the commentators give there is, when the person is holding on to the ways of the father, when he's continuing in the ways of the father, so then the sin of the father will be visited upon him because it's also his sin. However, once again, the Zohar gives us an explanation that removes any of the questions. And he writes, Ilana Chada, one tree, one soul. The Insiv Chado train zimnin, Atlat Zimva Arba Zimnin, which is planted into a body once, twice, 3 times, and 4 times. V'itpakad al chovai kadmai. He will be held responsible for earlier transgressions. Av uben ushlishi revi chadhu. The father, the son, the third and fourth generation are all one soul. Kad lo itkain lo chayash itakna, right? Which has not been rectified and has not tried to rectify itself. So this is very, very laden, very, very packed. So we see over here a number of things that will go more in depth as we go on, is that the reason a person will come back is to rectify something that was not unfinished business, right, is what we could call it. So that is why a person might need to come back, and it's all the same person. Meaning, well, why should I be held responsible for something that I did, right? An earlier manifestation of myself. It's me. I'm responsible for that which I did. I might be wearing a different garment now, and we'll touch upon this next week on the last of the series when we deal with the resurrection, right? The question that's asked is, well, once we learned in week 3 that there's such a thing as Gilgal, so who gets up? Who gets up by the resurrection, right? But we'll touch upon this more next week. But it's me. It's not I'm being held responsible for something that someone else did. It's all me wearing different garments in different bodies as we've made our way through these different generations. Yes, Janet.
How is it determined if someone needs to have Gilgal to make right versus that recompense in Gehenna?
Okay, good. We'll touch upon that also. Good. Okay. So when is there Gehenna, right? When is there week 2 and when is there week 3? Your Honor. You asked something, or was that Basil? I heard a voice coming. Oh, Basil.
So are we all the same person from before? We're just sharing a different...
Okay, so are we all Gilgulim? So I couldn't tell you that, right? Someone asked if I could look into their soul and tell them exactly who they are. I give a definite answer. No, I cannot, right? I'm not that kind of guy. Sorry. Maybe you thought you hired a different type of rabbi, but that's not what I can do. However, I do remember hearing a teaching that according to the Mekubalim, that this generation, as we're getting closer and closer to the end of time and Mashiach, so this is that we are mostly Gilgulim and here to clean up things. I also have heard that it's from the Dor Hamabul, from the generation of the flood, which might explain why we're all so sluggish when it comes to spirituality. We're sort of waterlogged. Yes, Leah.
General question. these beliefs go also for Gentiles that they have to be good, or just for Jews?
I would imagine both, but I don't know for sure. I would imagine both because, like we said before, Judaism has a very universalistic view that it's not just Jews, it's human beings, right? Jews have our path to God and to our ultimate afterlife, as do non-Jews. So I imagine the same mechanisms, right? I would imagine would also be in place for non-Jews.
So taking it a step further, going to the extreme of Nazi Germany, all were villains, right? I mean, most assuming. So what is the approach to the new generation that actually many of them repent, they come to Israel to rebuild, they work at the kibbutzim,
Yeah,
memorials
Yeah.
all over the place.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
what is the approach? I mean,
yeah. That could very well be, right? And if Leah pointed out how you have many descendants of Nazis who convert to Judaism, who work on kibbutzim, and who are ardent proponents for Israel. Who knows, right? To me, that's one of the beauties that we have, that there's so much mystery in life. Sometimes.
Isn't the point also that we're moving in the direction of good and perfection?
Yeah, that's the whole idea, rectifying, right? Trying to make things better. Sometimes you encounter someone that you just very quickly find you have a deep connection with this person, right? And like I said, I don't know, but I would imagine that there's a very good chance that the two of you knew one another, right? This is not your first tango together. Who knows? Yes, Cheryl.
So, how does gender figure into this?
I guess how about gender? I guess I believe that I don't know. I think I remember hearing that there can be some, which would be very very well accepted in today's world, some gender fluidity, meaning that a person might not have been in the past always the same gender that one is now. I don't know. I don't know.
So the meaning of that beloved souls has no gender?
Does a soul have a gender? So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Victor's making a good point. So it would seem that a soul does not necessarily have a gender. A soul would have a mission, right? According to that, if that is accurate, then again, I am no Kabbalist and
Right.
no expert on this.
But true-
Gabriella?
I heard a teaching once that women, Jewish women aren't Gilgulim, but the men do. Is that any?
I don't know. Look, it would make a lot more sense that men mess up a lot more than women, but I have not heard that. So I don't know, Your Honor.
So a true tzaddik doesn't get reincarnated. This has no need.
Okay, so a true tzaddik, it would follow. Look, we'll start section 2, purpose of creation, purpose of reincarnation shortly. So it would follow that a true tzaddik, oh, welcome back. It would follow that a true tzaddik, right, would not be reincarnated. There'd be no need for that. At the same time, there is many teachings. There's the Arizal has a Sefer HaGilgulim, all about Gilgulim and saying who's a Gilgul of who, and we find that so and so was, or Shimon Bar Yochai was a spark, a nitzutz, a spark of the neshama of Moshe. Now Moshe certainly did not need reincarnation, right? But that's not reincarnation. There is a nitzutz, there is a spark, right? Chizkiyahu Hanavi, from David HaMelech down. or Shmuel Hanavi, right? So a true tzaddik does not need reincarnation, but there is this concept of a nitzutz nishama, a spark of the soul. What that means, I don't know. Maybe that'll be part 5 if I can find some things on that. But I don't know. Okay. Eov, lastly, the last of our hints to this, even though, again, it's not explicit until we get to the Kabbalistic sources. Eov, Job, Hein kol elif al kel pa'amim shalosh im gever. God does all these things with man 2 or 3 times. Lahashiv nafsho mine shachat, to bring his soul from the grave, leor ba'or hachayim, to bask in the light of the living. So in Eov, Job, we do have this pasuk that God does this 2 or 3 times to bring the soul from the shachat. Does that mean the grave? If it's reincarnation, it means the grave. Yeah. Okay. So what is this purpose of reincarnation? So like I touched upon in my introductory remarks, so before we can get to the purpose of reincarnation, we have to review the purpose of creation. And then we could see how that fits in to this reincarnation. Just one other point I did want to make before we get to that. And that is, there is a teaching of the Vilna Gaon about the book of Yonah, the book of Jonah. And of course, that tells the story of the Navi Yonah, the Navi Jonah. But he says that in addition to this factual account of Yonah, there's also this metaphorical, allegorical interpretation that Yonah is the neshama, is the soul, charged with a mission to fulfill in this world. What is the mission that every neshama is given? To perfect itself and those around us in this world. The neshama boards a vessel to journey through the world. What is the vessel that the neshama boards? What is the boat?
His life.
The body. The body is the boat that the neshama boards as it goes through. But very often a person wants to flee and avoid this mission of ours, right? Eventually the individual is swallowed up and departs from this world. We have the dog swallowing up Yonah, and we have the earth that swallows up a person at the end of their days. But Yonah, the soul, his task was unfinished. So what happens? And the word of Hashem came to Yonah a second time saying, arise and go to Nineveh. Take 2. Now get it right. The soul is sent back to earth to finally accomplish its intended mission. So the Vilna Gaon, again, not saying it's all a mashal, in addition to the factual episode of Yonah, it also serves as a mashal, as a parable to this idea of the mission, getting into the boat, trying to run away, getting swallowed up, and then play it again, Sam. Take 2, right? And then he being spat out to now go to Nineveh and accomplish what needed to be accomplished. Okay. So again, purpose of reincarnation, purpose of creation. Let's go to source 8 on our sheet. Once again from the Derech Hashem, the Ramchal. We'll go straight to the English for time's sake. God's purpose of creation was to bestow of his good to another. His wisdom therefore decreed that the nature of this true benefaction of B, his giving created things, the opportunity to attach themselves to him to the greatest degree possible for them, right? God wants to give out good. God is the epitome of good. The epitome of good that he wants to give is for us to connect to God. His wisdom decreed, however, that for such good to be perfect, the one enjoying it must be its master. We have to have earned it. It has to become part of ourselves. That is, he must earn it for himself. Man must earn his perfection through his own free will and desire. It is necessary, therefore, for humankind to be given free will to be balanced between good and evil and not compelled toward either. That's the world that we're placed in. In order that God's goal best be achieved, the highest wisdom decree that man should consist of two opposites. These are one spiritual soul and the unenlightened physical body. Each one is drawn toward its nature. The body inclines towards the material, the soul towards the spiritual. The two are then in a constant battle. If the soul prevails, it not only elevates itself, but the body as well, and the individual thereby attains one's destined perfection. The Ramchal later on speaks about Gilgul explicitly. Ramchal, of course, is one of our Kabbalistic sources. Od Shorish Echad is another principle regarding God's providence. God arranged matters so that man's chances of achieving ultimate salvation should be maximized. So it's not just if we got it on the first pitch. A single soul can be reincarnated a number of times in different bodies. And in this manner, it can rectify the damage done in previous incarnations. Similarly, it can also achieve perfection that was not attained in its previous incarnation. So Ramchal here is giving us two ideas that the Arizal, in his introduction to Shar HaGilgulim, there, right, Shar Gilgulim is the gateway of Gilgul, and there in his introduction he gives reasons why. Number one, source number 10, number one, repairing spiritual damage incurred through transgression in the previous life that the Ramchal mentioned, rectify damage done. Number two, achieving a level of perfection that was not achieved previously. Ramchal also mentioned that, the very end of source number 9. Number three, one may be reincarnated for the purpose of helping others to reach spiritual perfection.
I'm not sure if it's a question or just making myself understood. There's two elements we're working on. We're working on God, perfection. So God moves into perfection in everything he does. Then we have human beings who do not move in perfection. They move in a direction that could be good or not good. So the not good, in order to be taken up by God, has to be enhanced. So there has to be a change.
Yeah.
So the change has to come because human beings are not the perfection,
choosing.
Right?
Correct.
All right, it's not the perfection. In order to give it to God, who is the perfection, to move on to whatever it moves on to.
Right.
So the problem is it's not a problem.
The challenge.
The challenge is having these two different sources. One is constant perfection, and one is off and on perfection.
And I would just add that in the spiritual realm, closeness is similarity, because there's no physicality for there to be any physical proximity.
Correct.
Right? So God is absolutely perfect. God gives us the opportunity to make ourselves as good as we can, right? And doesn't just make us perfectly good and connect to God, because then we can't truly appreciate it because we have not earned it. We're not the owners, as Ramchal said. And that is the purpose. And therefore, as he said, we might be given more than one go at it if necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how can we change?
Yeah.
How can we improve?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So number 11 is a question that was asked, I think, by Janet. Right? This is the Reishis Chachma Shar HaYira. Why is reincarnation necessary for the soul, since it gets purified in Gehenna? Right? What roles does each play? My teacher, the Ramak, explained that there are two reasons for reincarnation. Because a person may be lacking in the observance of certain commandments which are needed for perfection. Gehenna can only purify, but not add that which is lacking. Gehenna cannot create. It can cleanse. It can purify. But if there are things that are lacking, that were not done, that were not fulfilled, so then Gehenna cannot fulfill that for a person, right? It could take the existing raw material, if we can call it that, and can purify that. but it does not create yesh me'ayin, something from nothingness. So if there is a lacking, then a person might need to come back in order to fulfill that which was not fulfilled in the first way.
So that's a very clear, nice distinction. If someone has a lack, though, are they always given the chance to have this Gilgul process?
So when it comes to questions about always, Janet, right? One thing that I can say is this: God is always going to act in the most compassionate way for a person's eternity. How that is going to look, couldn't tell you, right? But yeah, that I am fully confident. God will always act in the most kind, gracious, benefacting manner to give a person their eternity when it can be. Okay. And let's see number 12, the Zohar. As long as a person is unsuccessful in fulfilling his purpose in this world, the Holy One, blessed is He, akale v'natale bekama zimnin. Right? The English says over and over again. That's not such a great translation in my mind. Kama zimnin means many times. Right? Over and over again seems to be right, never ending. Right? But that's not what the Hebrew says. Kama zimnin is kama pa'amim, right? Which means numerous times. Doesn't say forever. I wouldn't say, all right, again, over and over again does not necessarily mean, to me, the connotation over and over again is never ending, but that's not what the Hebrew says, and that's probably not what the English meant when they translated that, because the Hebrew is kama zimnin, which means many times. Yes, Esther.
So, as I understand Eastern philosophy, which I don't really understand, but their thought of reincarnation is somebody could be reincarnated into an animal or a rock or a plant or something. But in the Jewish understanding, it's always into another human body.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay then.
Good to know that.
Wow.
Not necessarily. I mean, I've heard, again, I'm no expert on this, but certainly there are many stories that we hear about. But that's never forever. Meaning, all of this is always in order to bring rectification, right? So that could be for a period of time. Where it was.
I'm just thinking of
There was a point, I'm trying to remember where this was, where I was teaching, and there was a certain cat that would always come and sit there more attentively than many of the people that I was teaching. And I remember like musing to myself, who knows?
Eastern religions are not as old as Judaism. Could it be that they've taken and interpreted Judaism?
It could very well be, right? There are certain very old Eastern religions that it could be that they have accessed some aspects of truth. Yeah.
I recall, I think it was King Saul, and he didn't kill Amalek. And didn't he turn into an animal or something?
I don't know. I don't know.
I read that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Especially if it was on the internet.
If you saw it on the internet, then I can't argue. Then it's absolutely, that's as factual as anything could ever be. Right? Okay. So there are many philosophical implications. Let's start part 3. Right? We'll start with the Ramchal. Again, Derech Hashem. When an individual has a reincarnated soul, it is possible that he will be affected in a particular manner as a result of deeds in a previous incarnation. The situation in which one is placed may follow from this, and this situation may bring with it the special responsibility given to this individual as discussed earlier. Right? I'll quote from Tevya, Lord who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. Would it spoil some vast, eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? Ho! Right? So actually, it might spoil some vast eternal plan for that person's own benefit if he were a wealthy man, because perhaps what the person needs to correct is to come back and not be wealthy, right? Maybe the person was a wealthy man and was very stingy with it, and needs to come back and understand how it feels on the other way, right? Who knows? Who knows? Right?
Who defines a wealthy man?
Okay, yeah. Right? Now, imagine a person who's going to be sent back to correct something, to fine tune something. So the person begs and says, look, you're sending me back to fine tune that. But once we're back, if, like Baz had brought up before, if we are all, or most of us are, in fact, Gilgulim, we have no recollection. So therefore, we might, until our soul leaves our body. And then we're taught that at that point, all memories come back. And we know exactly who we were, who we've been, what we were there to do, and how well we did with that. Pretty scary. Okay? But the person might be begging, don't just send me back to this world where all options are open to me. And who knows, you're sending me back to fine tune this, and I might end up destroying that much more. So in the heavens, they might decide to accede to his request and send the person back in a compromised manner, who will not be subjected to all of the trials and tribulations that, quote unquote, regular, normal, healthy people are subjected to. And what happens? This person, the soul, gives a heartfelt thank you. And as the person is born with these, call them abnormalities, everyone says, ay, Nebuch. Ay, so tragic. Did you hear? So-and-so had their baby, but, we shouldn't know of such things. And who's to know if that isn't what actually the neshama, the soul, was begging for? Who knows? Yes, Jack.
I get that from the soul's perfection standpoint, but isn't that at the expense of the
Okay.
and
Okay. The great. So how about the parents?
and also the expense of the body that doesn't know.
That's the same person. That person begged for that, right? In terms of the parents, so that's what I understand, what I call the great shadchan, the great matchmaker in the sky. Meaning that this neshama that needs to undergo whatever it is and was granted this limited existence here is given to parents who, with whatever their destiny, their mission is, they need to deal with a child who has these limitations. A conversation that I've had with my siblings. I lost my mother at a very young age. So the way I understand that is that here was a woman that needed to live 40 something years, and here was a soul that needed to go through the experience of losing a mother at a very young age, and that was the shidduch. That's what each of us needed to experience in order for us to become what we were, the Yona that we're sent to do in Nineveh. Yes, Leah.
So would you say it's true if one faces any challenge, behavioral or that was the reason he came back?
I-
Whatever is difficult for someone.
okay, so that's a beautiful idea, Leah. The Vilna Gaon gives this idea. How are we supposed to know what we're here to do, right? So I remember when I was a kid, there was a game called Stratego, where you had to try to get the other. It's kind of like capture the flag. We had to go try to get to the opposing player's flag. Typically, a person would put bombs around their flag, and that was a way of protecting it. So as you're hitting a bunch of bombs, you usually know, that's where your opponent's flag is. The Vilna Gaon says if you have a certain area which you really struggle with, it seems to keep coming at you, that's a pretty good indication that that's probably the area where you're meant to correct, to excel, whatever it might be. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this, going back to what we began with much earlier, right? Why do bad things happen to good people, right? But this person is so good, or so this, so that. We have no idea of all that led up to that. Let's take a look at number 14, the Vilna Gaon and Evan Shlema. Right? Somebody was a wicked person in his first incarnation. God brings him down in the time of the waning of the moon, and he lives a life of poverty, even though he is now righteous. This is Tzaddik Viralo. This is the classic, a righteous person, and for whom bad things happen. And of this, the sages said, the Chazal sages say, Chaye Bane Mizone, length of life, number of children, and Mizone, the extent of one's sustenance, Lo bizuchuta talia ela b'mazla talia milta. It's not dependent on one's merit, but on one's mazal. Mazal does not mean luck. Mazal means one's destiny, what it is that one is meant to accomplish. That's when we wish a mazal tov. We're not wishing you good luck, right? At different junctures of a person's life, birth, brit, bar bat mitzvah, marriage. These are all crossroads of a person's life. We wish them mazal tov, that which flows down to you should be good, comfortable, easy. Right? Everyone has their destiny, and our hope and our prayer and our blessing is that yours should be a life of comfort. And in such an environment, you are meant to live your life and accomplish what you are meant to accomplish. Now, we also have a incredible teaching, again from the Zohar, right? Parshat Mishpatim in Shmot, right after the Torah being given, is very, very mundane, civil, monetary laws, damages, etc., etc. The parsha begins, Ve'ela Mishpatim, these are the ordinances that you should place before them. The Zohar says, Elaine Sidurin de Gugula. This is the cycle of reincarnation. Reincarnation, when it comes to these monetary civil laws, seems very strange. And he writes, I'll go right to the English, the Degel Machne Ephraim. This is a surprising connection, seeing that the subsequent verses speak about monetary laws. However, I heard the following explanation. One person accuses another in court that he owes him money. Though the defendant knows he is innocent, the Torah nevertheless obligates him to pay. Right? Meaning, I'm brought to Beit Din. The Beit Din rules I have to pay. But I know I didn't do the damage. I know I didn't borrow the money. So how can I be liable to pay? How could the Beit Din obligate me to pay when I know they've gotten it wrong? I'm not liable.
Can you appeal?
Huh? Your Honor, isn't the Torah a Torah of truth, whose paths are pleasant? Because this is the truth of the Torah and its pleasantness. How can this be so? Undoubtedly, he owed this money to the other man in a previous incarnation. And the Torah is now making him pay in order to free him from that debt. As for the person who took the money deceitfully, he will have to give his own accounting in the future. This is only one example of many possible cases. This is what the Holy Zohar alludes to when it's reading the verse, Eila Mishpatim, that this is all about Gilgal. For while the law may at times seem unjust, really these are the cycles of reincarnation. The creator of the world and of all souls knows what occurred between individuals in previous lives and directs his world according to the Torah, with love and compassion, with righteousness and with true justice.
So you're paying a debt of your previous soul.
You're paying your own debt from a previous
soul.
Right.
But you're paying the debt to somebody you never owed any money to.
Unless that was the person that I owe the money to from the first tango.
In their next Gilgal.
In their next Gilgal. Right? And if not, then this person doesn't really deserve that money. This person can't, right? So then that becomes that person's
problem,
issue that they'll need to deal with. Right? But it's a much neater bow that we can tie when it's not A and B's first tango.
So if you recognize in the time that you're alive that you haven't paid this back, right? And you haven't paid it back for whatever reason it is, you do not want to or don't want to pay it back. Can you do something in your lifetime to get that released from?
So look, well, first of all, let's keep in mind that if we owe money, we should pay it. We don't want to have a return engagement to take care of that, right? Right? But if we have something from a previous Gilgal, then we have to have the belief that God sent me here in order to take it. And as long as I act in a just, honest manner as I make my way through life this time, then that will be rectified. God will set that up.
So if you cheated on your income tax but got away with it, you have to refile.
Dina de Malchusa, Dina, you might just have to. Victor.
How do you have conscience? Let's call it that you are coming back to life. How do you have that conscience that you have to pay for something?
So you don't. In other words, we're not meant to walk around. We're not meant to walk around with this heavy head.
Yeah.
Oh no. What we're meant to do is deal with each interaction in our life, which is not easy. Deal with each interaction in our life in as upright, honest, kind manner as we can. And like I said, and that's what I said, and then we could have confidence that I've been given the opportunity and I have maximized that opportunity.
Now
right?
I can trust God that He'll make me in this lifetime
Give you the opportunities, right? As long as we act properly, right? As we make our way through, then we could have that confidence.
So the judges who are judging this, do they have some kind of, do they collaborate and have this feeling about?
So once again, that goes into the realm of the judges. If they were judging it properly, and Hashem put into their mind this, and that was not through any malfeasance on their part, then they're gold. If they decided to distort justice as they saw it, so God's going to commandeer that and use it properly, but then they'll be held responsible for their malfeasance, right? Each of us, we can't say the Gilgal made me do it, right? That doesn't work, right? We have to deal with each interaction in the best way possible, right?
I think what it does, it gives you the guilt that you're passing down some problem to somebody else who's going to come back.
Yeah.
I think that it's also concept.
Now, when it comes to a premature death, right? When we say premature, And that's why I try very hard to, when someone says, "Oh, it's terrible, horrible," I don't say it's terrible. I don't say it's horrible. I'll say it's tragic.
Yes.
I'll say it's so sad. I'll say it's heartbreaking. But that's describing how I feel about it, as opposed to passing judgment on the Dayan Emet, on the true judge, by saying it's terrible, horrible, right? Tragic, heartbreaking. Those are terms that I use, because our understanding is that different people, based on this idea of Gilgul, have different matters that need to be accomplished in this world. And if we're viewing this world as a temporary place until we return home, one of our first sources was Parshat Re'eh in Bamidbar, Banim Atem Hashem Elokeichem, you're the children of God, and the child returns home. So how long does the child need to be away from home, right? So that will determine how long a person might be living. And this comes down in a very halachic manner. Take a look at source number 16. Hanichnas toch dar amud shel meit, o shel kever, dino kenichnas lebeit hakvarot. Okay, this is in the laws of tzitzit. When one goes into a cemetery, one needs to make sure that their tzitzit are tucked in. Why? Because there's a concept of loeg larash. You don't want to be mocking the poor one. Here, I can fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit. My tzitzit are draping on the grave of a person who can no longer. We had mentioned last week, I think it was the Vilna Gaon, who was crying on his deathbed that this mitzvah of tzitzit that can be accomplished in this world for just a few pennies, there he won't be able to do that anymore. So you don't want to wear the tzitzit. The same thing applies to if one is within 4 amos, or 6 feet, we'll say, of a body or of a grave. The Chavetz Chaim then in Mishmura writes, even regarding the grave of a child, one should be stringent because of mocking the poor, loeg larash. Why? A child is not obligated in mitzvot, so why would that be mocking the child? For maybe the soul of this child is the soul of a great man. And therefore, granted the child died, but maybe this was a reincarnation of a great person. And maybe that's why the child died at a young age. Because maybe what needed to be accomplished was accomplished. And therefore you'll still be mocking. Even the greatest tzaddik, the greatest righteous person in the world to come cannot fulfill any more mitzvot. And therefore would still be considered loeg larash, as if we are mocking someone.
So why don't we celebrate a person who's accomplished life and done whatever he had to do earlier, and is now perfect?
Why don't we celebrate the death of a child? Because of our loss, and we are human, and we have our human eyes. And as I sat with a family yesterday that was on the verge of losing their father, a husband, brother-in-law, right? That, and I spoke to them about the idea of kriya, the tearing of a garment that we do. That part of it is that we're human, and we feel anger, and we feel sadness, and we want to, right? That's all part of it. So we're not expected to be malachim, to be angels and see everything. We have to see it through human eyes. And therefore, when a child is sick, we don't say, oh, well, that's great, I guess he's a tzaddik. We do everything we possibly can do to try to preserve the life, because maybe that can be done, right? But ultimately, when that can't be done, like King David HaMelech, so he was so bereft when his child was sick. When the child died, they were afraid to tell him anything. He realized from their way they were talking that something must have happened. He asked, and they explained, we didn't want to tell you. And he got up and he washed and he said, look, as long as the child was ill, I was doing whatever I could do, pleading, praying, etc., to try to change. Once the child died, that means that was it. So we say Baruch Dayan Emet, but we mourn the loss of the relationship that we had. And we mourn the loss of that person that we loved, that we no longer have that connection to. So the Torah very beautifully does not expect us, understands that we're human with human emotions, but we need to try to have our intellect, our understanding, at least cushion the blow. Yes.
Still, as Beth says, and you've often said, that person may have shed the garment, but they're transitioning to the next part. Even though it's somber, in some cases you point out that there is something possibly to celebrate, and that they might be able to have aliyah and get closer to Hashem.
Yeah.
Although, Baz, from the other standpoint, there's also the thought of, oh my gosh, like Rabbi was just saying, now this person can't do more mitzvot, and we can't rejoice in their doing it. So so maybe that's another reason we don't
balance.
Celebrate. Maybe they are ready, and thank God they're going to have aliyot.
Yeah.
But then, that one little thing, maybe it would have been that even a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think that's why we also, when people live a long life, we call it a blessing.
Yeah.
I think because they've accomplished more.
Yeah, they had more time to accomplish, 100%. And it's the last source which touches upon what I said before, when a child is born with disabilities, abnormalities. So this again, Rabbi Mordechai Becher, he wrote the book that I often recommend, right? But here, this is on Orsa Ask the Rabbi. I've heard that the famous Chazon Ish, Rabbi Avram Yeshaya Karelitz, stood up for people with Down syndrome and the like. He would stand up to give them honor. If this is true, I understand it as follows. Each person is given faculties. These faculties allow him to reach one's potential. The greater gifts and faculties a person is given, the more one is obligated to achieve. A person is created far away from a goal, but given the tools to get there. A person born with very limited faculties obviously has a much smaller goal to achieve, has a shorter distance to travel. So in essence, the person of limited capabilities is created closer to one's state, to their state of personal perfection. Such a person may even be a reincarnation of a great tzaddik or tzaddiket who achieved near perfection the first time around, but needs to come back to this world to be able to achieve perfection. Such a person is worthy of respect.
I once heard at a funeral a rabbi say, the decedent is probably the only one in the room who never spoke a word of Lashon Hara because of the disability.
Speech impediment. Yeah, whatever. Or mute.
Because of like Down syndrome.
Whatever it was. Yeah. So we never know who it is that we are dealing with. We never know why something comes our way, right? If we bring it upon ourselves, that is on us. But when we have certain situations that come our way, we have to recognize that it's for us to deal with in the best way possible, and that there is a reason for the madness. There is a purpose in all that comes our way, that nothing in this world is haphazard. We are under the hashgacha pratis, the divine providence, giving us all the tools that we need for as long as we need them. And that's the Allstate. We're in good hands.
So Rabbi, who do I thank if I win the lottery this week?
Who do you thank?
If I win the lottery this week.
You thank God.
What about the person, soul I am?
Huh?
My previous soul guys, I don't thank them.
That's you. You want to thank yourself. Moda ani, a new meaning. Moda ani, I thank myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you planning to move?
I'll be planning
Every
the
week he
whole time,
plans
so
that.
bad.
Okay, we'll call it
I
over
will
here.
never have
What
one.
is the
Everyone could say,
limits right now?
I think.
You must be a rich man, you have enough camels.
Oh, I dream a lot.
all right.
I dream a lot. You know what I say? Listen, you spend $10
Rabbi, sometimes
on
the
that